The Wolves of Willoughby Chase by Joan, Aiken, Chapter 10. All three children retreated on the landing once more. It seemed dreadful to stay in the little close room and talk about Aunt Jane, with her quite unconscious of their presence. Sylvia noticed that the window was shut, the dishes unwashed, a thick layer of dust covered everything. "What do you think is the matter with her?" Sylvia said, her voice quavering. "I don't know," said Bonnie decidedly. "But whatever it is, we must get a doctor to her at once." "Yes, Bonnie, how sensible of you, but where shall we find one?" "Has Aunt Jane no regular doctor?" "She always said she could not afford one," said Sylvia, dissolving into tears. "She always said that all her ailments could be cured by Parkinson's penny pink pills." "Now come, Sylvia, don't get into those crying ways again," Bonnie began, sounded cross because she was so worried, but Simon interposed. "I think I saw a doctor's plate on the floor below. Wait a moment, and I'll go down and make certain." He pushed past the geese, who were roosting on the stairs, and ran down to the landing below. Sure enough, by the door, out of which the head had popped, was a notice: Gabriel Field, physician and chirurgeon, which I think is a way of saying surgeon. Simon knocked. A voice shouted, "Come in, it's not locked!" And so he pushed open the door and looked into a room which was in a considerable degree of confusion. Several shelves along the walls bore a clutter of bottles, vials, and surgical implements. A large table was covered with brushes, jars, and tubes of paint, while the floor was almost equally littered with stacks of canvases and piles of medical books. The young man who had looked out before stood with a paintbrush in his hand, considering a half-finished painting on a large easel. "Oh, it's you again, is it?" he said, seeing Simon's perplexed face round the door. "What do you want?" Simon found something reassuring in his rather brusque manner. "Please, are you Dr. Field, sir?" "Yes, I am." "The old lady upstairs is very ill. Could you come and look at her?" "Certainly. Just a moment while I wash my hands." I was doing a bad Simon voice, so let's fix that. While Dr. Field was washing and fetching a black bag of medicines from his bedroom, Simon stared at the pictures on the easel. "Like it?" said the doctor, coming back. "Yes," said Simon, "I do, very much. But I'm not sure about this bottom right-hand corner. It seems a bit too dark." The doctor gave him a surprised look before waving him out the door and hurrying upstairs. He brushed past the two girls and the geese without comment and made his way to Aunt Jane's bedside. "One of you two girls come and help me," he said, and so Sylvia went, while the other two remained on the landing in a silence of anxiety and suspense. They had to wait some time while Dr. Field made a thorough examination of Aunt Jane. Then he and Sylvia came out on the landing again. "She's your aunt, is she?" he said sharply. "Well, you've been neglecting her. She's suffering from malnutrition." As none of them appeared to understand this word, he added impatiently, "Undernourishment. She's been starving herself." Sylvia began to cry quietly. "Oh, poor Aunt Jane. I should never have left her." "I'm to blame, too," said the doctor angrily. "I saw her coming upstairs a couple of weeks ago, with her shopping, 1 egg and an apple. I should have guessed." "What does she need, sir?" said Simon quietly. "I'll go out and get it." "Firstly, champagne. She's too weak to take anything else at the moment. You needn't bother about that. I've a bottle in my room. Then beef tea, eggs, milk, butter, honey." "We'll go and get them," said Bonnie. "Come on, Simon. I saw a basket in Aunt Jane's parlour. Sylvia, you stay with the doctor and see to the champagne. Can you direct us to the nearest market, sir? We have only just come to London and don't know our way about." Dr. Field told them how to find the nearest market, and they ran off with their basket, while Sylvia helped administer a few teaspoons of champagne to Aunt Jane, tipping it between her motionless lips. "You're the old lady's niece, are you?" the doctor said. "I've been in this house a month. I thought she had no kin at all. It's high time she was properly looked after." Sylvia considered the doctor. He had a kind, sensible face, and she was inclined to confide the whole story to him and ask his advice, but thought she had better wait till the others returned. Simon and Bonnie soon came back. They were loaded, for as well as the food, Simon was carrying a small sack of coal, and Bonnie had a blanket and a fleecy shawl. While they were out, they had a short, brisk argument. "Simon, this is your money we're spending, your year's money. We shouldn't be doing it." "Oh, fiddlesticks," he said uncomfortably. "Anybody would do all they could to help that poor old lady." Well, I shall pay you back as soon as I possibly can, Simon, if I ever get my own home and money back. But otherwise, do you understand? You'll have to wait till I can earn some money, and gracious knows how many months that will be. Oh, get along with you, girl. You're wasting time, said Simon good-naturedly. Dr. Field suggested that they should do their cooking downstairs in his room, in order not to disturb the invalid. So Bonnie, first borrowing Aunt Jane's cookery book, set about scraping some beef and putting it to simmer with carrots and a teaspoonful of brandy. Simon lit a fire in Aunt Jane's room, and Sylvia tiptoed about, clearing the place and setting it to rights. Every now and then Dr. Field came in and administered another teaspoon of champagne, and presently he reported, with satisfaction, an improvement in the patient's breathing and a tinge of color in her cheeks. "Your cousin's cooked you a meal," he said to Sylvia and Simon after a while. "Better come down and eat in my room." They realized that they had not eaten all day and were glad to come down. Bonnie had cooked a great pan full of bacon and eggs, which she cordially invited the doctor to share. "Are you all cousins?" he said, when they were eating among the paints and bottles of medicine. "Oh, no, Sylvia and I are, but Simon's no relation." "Where are all your parents?" They looked at each other, and without the need of discussion decided that they could trust the doctor. Bonnie told him the whole story, ending with the sight of Mr. Grimshaw at the lawyer's office that morning. "And, oh, sir," she ended, with tears in her eyes, "can you tell me if the ship my parents sailed in truly sunk? Truly? What was its name?" "The Thessaly." "Yes, my poor child," he said sadly. "I wish I could tell you otherwise, but I read the report in the Times myself. It was said that the captain should never have set sail, knowing the dangerous state of the ship's hull. It was said that someone must have paid him handsomely to do so, and it was rumored that he himself had escaped in a small boat some hours before the wreck." Bonnie could not speak for a moment. She turned away to the window and bit her lip. Dr. Field went on hastily to break the unhappy silence. "The whole business sounds to me like a plot, hatched up beforehand by this Miss Slycarp of yours, who's evidently a thorough wrong-'un, and her precious friends, Mr. Grimshaw and Mrs. Brisket. Whether Gripe the lawyer has a hand in it too, we can't be sure, but I've a friend who's a lawyer, and as soon as Miss Green is fit to be left, I'll go and see him, and ask him what he knows about Gripe." "Oh, could you, sir? Thank you indeed." Their faces of gratitude evidently touched his heart, for he said gruffly, "A couple of you can bed down here if you like. I've plenty of cushions. Just shift some of these books and pictures, and the skeleton off the sofa." Sylvia gave a faint scream, for she had not noticed the skeleton before. "One of you should sleep upstairs with the old lady, and you'd better get yourselves a wash and brush up. You look as if you can do with it." The beef tea was ready now, and Sylvia, with the doctor's help, fed some of it to Aunt Jane through a straw. She opened her eyes at once, but seemed hardly conscious of her surroundings yet. With the aid of a couple of the doctor's blankets, Sylvia made herself up a couch for the night by the side of Aunt Jane's bed. They were all tired and went to sleep as soon as they lay down. In the middle of the night, Sylvia awoke. She had left a night light burning, and in its faint glimmer she saw that Aunt Jane had raised herself on the pillows and was looking wonderingly about her. "Mind, Auntie," said Sylvia, springing up. "You'll uncover yourself." Carefully she arranged the woolly shawl round her aunt's shoulders again. "It is Sylvia." "But no," said Aunt Jane mournfully. "I have so often dreamed that she came back. This must be just another dream." "No, it isn't," said Sylvia, forgetting to be careful in her joy, and giving her aunt an impetuous hug. "It really is me, come back to look after you, and I've brought Bonnie too." "Sylvia, my precious child," Aunt Jane murmured, and 2 tears slipped down her cheeks. "Now, Aunt dear, you mustn't. You must get strong quickly. Please try to sip some of this," said Sylvia, who had been hastily heating up the beef tea over the nightlight. Aunt Jane sipped it, and soon, for she was still very weak, she slipped off to sleep, holding Sylvia's hand, and Sylvia too began to doze, leaning against her aunt's bed, half awake and half dreaming. She dreamed that she was on top of a mountain, the black ridge they had crossed before they reached Herondale. She saw Miss Slycarp coming up from Blastburn at the head of a pack of wolves. Sylvia was dumb with fright. She was unable to move. Nearer and nearer Miss Slycarp came. Tramp, tramp, tramp. Suddenly Sylvia was awake and listening, and there were footsteps coming up the stairs. She lay, palpitating, with her heart hot against her ribs. Who could it be? The night was still black dark. No light showed under the door. If it was the doctor, surely he would be carrying a light. The steps were very slow, very cautious, as if whoever it was wanted to make as little sound as possible. Sylvia knew that she must. A frantic cackling, hissing, and honking broke out on the stairs. There was a yell, a thud, more cackling, pandemonium. "What is it?" said Aunt Jane drowsily. "Oh, what can it be?" cried Sylvia, pale with terror, but the noise had shaken her out of her paralysis, and she seized the candle, lit it at the night-light, and ran to the door. The scene that met her eyes when she held the door open was a strange one. At the top of the stairs were two indignant geese, hissing and arching their necks for battle. Prone on the stairs, head down and cursing volubly, was Mr. Grimshaw. Simon held one of his arms, and Bonnie the other. Dr. Field, in a dressing gown, looking sleepy and considerably annoyed, was emerging from his front door holding a piece of rope with which he proceeded to tie Mr. Grimshaw's hands and ankles. "Breaking into people's houses at 3 a.m, he muttered. "That's really a bit high. It's bad enough having children and geese camped all over the place." "It was lucky the geese sounded the alarm," said Bonnie, pale but clutching Mr. Grimshaw gamely. "True," Dr. Field agreed. "Now lock him in the broom closet. Good. I'll just run down and bolt the outside door. Then perhaps we can have a bit more sleep. We'll get to the bottom of all this in the morning." Yawning, they went back to bed, but Sylvia declared she was too scared to sleep without Bonnie, and so they brought up more of the doctor's cushions and made a double pallet beside Aunt Jane's bed. And that's the end of Chapter 10.